JD Vance and Elon Musk, both the technical and actual vice presidents of the United States, both seem to agree that courts should have no power whatsoever so long as Donald Trump is president. If the Democrats ever take over, then the courts, of course, are the most important thing ever. But for now, no power. Okay, that's all well and good. But what does the head of the formerly third co-equal branch of the government think about that? Well, here is Mike Johnson being asked.
Should the White House comply if the federal court orders them to do something, such as destroying the records that they downloaded from the Treasury Department?
Well, look, there are appellate processes and all of that. I haven't followed the latest on the litigation, but obviously we have systems that have to work. We're fully supportive of what the DOJ effort is doing and what the president is doing. It's a very aggressive agenda that was promised to the voters. Remember, he's delivering on campaign promises right now. We are going to be codifying a lot of these changes, and what they've uncovered is frankly shocking. This is a good development. I wish the courts would allow the executive and the legislative branches to work.
Okay, so there's a lot there. So one, I wish the courts would just lay there and take it. I wish they would just, like, why are you pretending that you're a thing? Don't do the checks and balances or whatever. Just shut up, okay? Donald Trump is trumping with the promises that he made to the electorate. You all remember when Donald Trump said that Elon Musk and a bunch of 17-year-olds would be busting down the door of agency after agency and accessing your and your family's private information and possibly planting worms and backdoors into government systems. You remember the campaign ads they ran all across the country about that, right? The only part of that I really believe is that he supports it. Because he does seem to. He's certainly not doing anything, Mike Johnson, to stop any of this. He's not providing any sort of check on what Donald Trump is doing. Now, he eventually says we'll be codifying some of this. But that, of course, is not how the country works. It's not how our government works. It's not how the Constitution says it's supposed to be done. If this funding has been allocated by Congress, past Democratic Congresses, past Republican Congresses, it is not on the president to be like, no, we're not doing that. And if the courts have a problem with it, if they point out that that's not constitutional, we just tell them to kick rocks. And then someday the puppets I call the House of Representatives will get around to codifying it. That's not the system we have, okay? And it's certainly not the system that he ran on. And so I wasn't really expecting any more out of Mike Johnson. He seems like he's a company man. He's bowed down to the machine. He's doing what they want. But when the Democrats, as we'll get to, their only hope, David, is that some Republicans will do the right thing. I don't know. It's not great to see that Mike Johnson, who previously would have probably presented himself as like a reasonable Republican, no, he's totally on board for the effective death of the judiciary. What do you think?
I'm going to try to be a optimistic person and a happy person today and say two things. First of all, I think Mike Johnson is underscoring that Republicans right now are in a position of weakness. In other words, if Donald Trump really could make these changes and all these various government agencies and essentially reinvent government and get the public support, then yes, Congress would have a series of votes and Congress would vote to get rid of USAID or all these other agencies. But because they can't, that's why they're doing this in sort of the dead of night and bypassing Congress. That's the first part. So I think it's a weak position that Donald Trump starts in. The second part about this, which has been sort of reassuring to a certain extent, is there's now something like 14 lawsuits that have essentially stopped what Donald Trump and DOJ have been trying to do. And one of those has been stopped by a judge, a US district judge in Washington, Carl Nichols, who was appointed by Donald Trump, who threw out the Donald Trump claims that somehow USAID was fraudulent and corrupt and said, there's no evidence that you presented to that. So I'm not gonna let you fire 2,200 employees. You have to freeze things. There does come a point at which I suppose Donald Trump could say, okay, we're just not gonna pay any attention to what the courts say, and we're gonna tell the federal marshals who normally enforce this not to do anything, and the Justice Department not to do anything, and then of course we really do cross the Rubicon. But it is reassuring at least that there are some Republican judges appointed by Trump, appointed by Bush, appointed by Reagan, who are stopping this nonsense and saying, if you're gonna make changes, you have to do it the right way. You have to go through Congress.
Yeah, 100%. And you brought up the final point about what Mike Johnson had said that, oh, we've uncovered all this stuff, it's utter corruption. Could we see some of that? Could we see what the corruption is? Because he's saying it. I mean, they're tweeting that there's I haven't seen any. What have they come out with? USAID funded a bunch of crazy woke stuff. And then you look at it and you find out that the vast majority of it wasn't even funded by USAID. It was a separate State Department thing. So again, if the best evidence you have to justify the most woke of all of these agencies being shut down is stuff that wasn't done by that agency, and even if it had been, is pennies of the federal budget, then I sort of understand why you're keeping this as much behind closed doors as possible. You don't want people to see how paltry the evidence actually is. And meanwhile, while this is going on, all those, as you alluded to, all the judges trying to shut this stuff down. And everybody, remember, we made this very clear yesterday. My issue, at least, is not just that they're saying they won't comply with judges. They're not complying with judges right now in multiple cases already, with the spending freeze, the allocation of resources, with the getting rid of the staff of USAID. They're already violating court orders on that every single day. And so bear that in mind. Meanwhile, Elon Musk, or as he now goes on Twitter, because he's both very cool and very edgy, Harry Balls. Okay, he's very funny. Right-wingers, they don't get enough credit for how funny they are. But anyway, he says democracy in America is being destroyed by judicial coup. An activist judge is not a real judge. So he's obviously not a genius, we've made that clear, but he is just clever enough to understand that when you have a situation where the richest man in the world who bought a party for the better part of $1/3 billion and is now just going around with his interns and shutting stuff down, that doesn't look very good, doesn't really seem to fit in with what our government is. So I should probably say that the other side is doing a coup by, temporarily halting some of this. Again, for him and for Mike Johnson, what they're identifying as unacceptable behavior on the part of the judiciary is stuff that they not only accepted, but applauded and pushed for when Joe Biden was president. They thought it was totally within the right of these judges to shut down his programs. And again, I'll point out, if their theory of the judiciary is accurate, then I guess student loan debt was canceled because the executive did it and the judiciary told him he couldn't. Well, who the hell are they? After all, they don't get to control the executive branch, I'm told, by every Republican in the country. And they clearly don't think that student loan debt was canceled. So this is all BS. This is just a cover story. What it's demanding, though, is for someone to actually do something about it. Because the judges, like the judge that stopped the spending freeze or whatever, isn't gonna march in and give Elon Musk a noogie until he gives or whatever. Like somebody actually has to enforce it. And right now we don't have much. We have John Thune said that the courts should call balls and strikes. The White House should comply, but he's not forcing them to. He's not saying, oh, by the way, all of your nominees for cabinet positions, I care so much about the government that we're gonna put a halt on that until you comply with these court orders. He could do that. He's not doing that. He's not doing literally anything other than talking. Amy Klobuchar says, what's gonna get Trump to comply with the courts? We need the Republicans to stand up. Well, that is a convenient excuse since you're not one of them and it has nothing to do with anything you would do. What are you gonna do? You're a senator. And Hakeem Jeffries says, what leverage do we have? They control all these things, which, yeah, they do control those things. But if you're saying that at least until the midterms, there's literally nothing you can do to stop this out of control, unconstitutional power grab, then get the hell out of the way and let someone come in who's at least willing to try or brainstorm, experiment a little bit. Hakeem Jeffries basically just said he's gonna take a 1.5 year long vacation and see what's left of America when he comes back. And I personally think with the amount of damage that's been done in just the past couple of weeks, I don't think there will be enough of America left at that point to be worth a damn. But anyway, I don't know if you have any thoughts about what the Democrats could or should do, or any other thoughts about this before we move on.
I think they should put AOC and Jasmine Crockett out there nonstop. They're the two that are cutting through all the noise. Don't let Chuck Schumer get out there. I don't even think Hakeem Jeffries is that effective. Put your Democratic stars out there to make the point that what is going on is an unconstitutional power grab. I think the public is starting to catch on because even though Donald Trump has high approval numbers, when people are asked specifically about a constitutional crisis, a lot of Americans are nervous and a lot of Republicans now are suggesting they're not very happy with what Elon Musk is doing, and they don't see anything that the Trump administration is doing to lower the price of food and eggs. So it's getting there, but you need some accelerant. You need AOC, Jasmine Crockett, other stars to essentially pour gasoline on the fire and say, this is a big deal, and draw some more attention to what's going on. The public is moving in that direction, but I fear the public is not moving quickly enough in order to catch up with the speed with which Donald Trump and Elon Musk are essentially destroying our society.
Yeah. Yeah, and by the way, I mean, the two names you mentioned are those that I would put forward, but it doesn't all have to be politicians that I personally love or want to see in leadership. Like there's a bunch of, normie Dems or whatever that really like Pete Buttigieg. Put Pete Buttigieg out there too. He can communicate about some of this. I don't necessarily want him setting the agenda for the Democrats when they're back in power, but I'm totally comfortable with him pointing out how utterly illegal and unconstitutional this is. Hell, some people like Gavin Newsom. Have Gavin Newsom attack some of this. He's better on the attack than doing productive stuff anyway. And so it doesn't have to be just the most progressive lawmakers in the country, but they should definitely be the ones getting the push. We've all seen enough of Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer seems like a nice guy. He seems like he'd be a great grandpa, and he is wholly unfit for the time that we're in. Members make a difference here at TYT. You help make the show happen, and we see you in the chat with your loyalty badge. Click the join button to become a member today.